What Shohei Ohtani walked toward after the loss against the Colorado Rockies, through the tunnel that connects the field to the private world that exists beneath the stadium, away from cameras, away from reporters, away from the 40,000 people filing out into the parking lot with the particular quiet of a crowd that came expecting a victory and is leaving without one, was something so simple and so human that when the story reached the wider Dodgers community, it did not just touch them. It stopped them completely. A woman. A dog. A tunnel. And the way those three things were arranged when Ohtani rounded the corner told the entire story of who he is when the game is over and the person underneath the uniform gets to exist again. Before we talk about the tunnel, we need to sit inside the loss for a moment. Because the emotional weight of what Mamiko and Decapin were waiting to meet matters only when you understand what Ohtani was carrying when he walked toward them. Losses to the Colorado Rockies are not supposed to hurt like this. The Rockies in 2025 are not a team that should trouble the Los Angeles Dodgers. By payroll, by roster depth, by every metric that professional baseball uses to sort the competitive landscape, this was a game that belonged in the Dodgers column before the first pitch was thrown. The kind of game that a championship-caliber team circles on the schedule not as a challenge but as an obligation: show up, execute, move on. The Dodgers did not move on. Not that night. It was not a catastrophic loss. There was no single moment of complete collapse, no error that will haunt the highlight reels for weeks. It was the kind of loss that in some ways is harder to process, a slow, grinding, accumulating failure of the small things. Pitches left over the middle of the plate at the wrong counts. Runners left on base in innings that felt like they should have broken open and didn't. Opportunities that arrived and then quietly closed without producing anything. By the final out, the scoreboard said something that felt wrong in the specific way that only an unexpected defeat to a lesser opponent can feel wrong. Not embarrassing. Not devastating. Just wrong. A misalignment between what should have been and what was. In the clubhouse afterward, the atmosphere was the particular silence of professional athletes processing something they cannot easily categorize. Nobody was shouting. Nobody was throwing things. The loss was not large enough for that. It was just sitting there, uncomfortable and stubborn, requiring acknowledgement before it could be filed away and replaced by tomorrow's preparation. Ohtani had contributed. He had hit. He had done the things that his lineup position and his extraordinary talent demanded of him in a professional sense. But the team had lost. And for Ohtani, a man for whom the team is not a backdrop to his individual performance but the entire point of everything, a team loss is a personal weight regardless of what his own numbers say. He walked through the tunnel carrying that weight. And Mamiko and Decapin were already there. The tunnel beneath a major league stadium is not a glamorous space. It is functional and fluorescent, a concrete corridor connecting the field level to the clubhouse, to the training room, to the private areas that the public never sees. Players walk it dozens of times a season, usually without thinking about it. It is transition space. The gap between the performed, public version of a baseball player and the private person who exists when the performance is over. On most nights, for most players, the tunnel is empty of anything except equipment carts and the faint echo of the stadium above. On this night, when Ohtani turned the corner and the tunnel came into view, it was not empty. Mamiko was standing there. Not waiting at the clubhouse entrance, not positioned at a public access point, she had come as far into that private space as the stadium would allow a non-player, and she was simply there. Present. Still. The particular stillness of someone who is not waiting nervously but waiting with purpose, who has decided that presence itself is the thing she can offer and has committed to it completely. Decapin was beside her. The Akita, broad-shouldered and calm in the way that large dogs often are when their instincts tell them the situation calls for calm, was leaning slightly against Mamiko's leg. Not agitated. Not bouncing with the energy that dogs typically bring to reunions. Just there. Anchored. As if he too understood, in whatever way animals understand the emotional frequency of the people they love, that tonight required steadiness rather than celebration. The people who witnessed this moment, Dodgers staff, a small number of players who passed through the tunnel in the moments that followed, the team personnel whose jobs keep them in those private spaces long after the game ends, described it afterward with the careful language of people trying not to overstate something that did not need overstatement to be powerful. One staff member, speaking to a Dodgers community reporter the following day, said simply, "It was the kind of thing you don't forget." Here is what everyone who was present agreed on: the change was immediate. Not dramatic. Not performed. Immediate, the involuntary, unself-conscious shift that happens in a person's body when they move from one emotional state into another before their mind has fully processed the transition. The weight that Ohtani had been carrying through the tunnel, the professional, contained, disciplined weight of a man processing a loss with the composure that elite athletes develop over years of training themselves to manage defeat, did not disappear. But it visibly reorganized itself into something that had room in it for other things as well. He reached Decapin first. The dog pressed forward, and Ohtani crouched down, this man who had just walked off a major league field after a defeat that was sitting uncomfortably in his chest, and put both hands into the thick fur of the Akita's neck and stayed there for a moment. Those who watched said the moment lasted only a few seconds. But those few seconds had a quality that stretched them. There was something in the completeness of the gesture, the way Ohtani gave the moment his full attention, not distracted, not already thinking about tomorrow's lineup, that made it feel longer and more significant than its physical duration. Then he stood. And Mamiko was there. What passed between them in the first moments of that reunion was private in the way that the most important things always are. No reporters. No cameras positioned to catch it. Just a husband and a wife in a fluorescent tunnel beneath a baseball stadium, one of them having just lost a game that sat wrong, the other having decided that the right response to that was simply to be present for it. The Dodgers community that heard about this moment in the days that followed did not need the specific details of what was said. The architecture of the moment told the story clearly enough. She came to the tunnel. She brought Decapin. She was there before he arrived. That sequence of choices, each one small and each one deliberate, added up to something that hit the people who heard about it somewhere deeper than baseball. It would have been entirely understandable for Mamiko to wait in the car. To wait at home. To send a message and let Ohtani complete the professional rituals of post-game, the media availability, the clubhouse decompression, the training staff check-in, before making his way back to the private world they share. That is what most people do. That is what most spouses and partners of professional athletes do, because they understand that the post-game space belongs to the team, to the organization, to the professional obligations that the job requires. They wait at a respectful distance and receive their person when that person has finished being a baseball player for the evening. Mamiko made a different calculation. She decided that the tunnel was where she needed to be. Not after the obligations. During them, in the brief passage between the field and the clubhouse, in the 15 seconds of transition space where Ohtani was neither a professional athlete performing his post-game duties nor a private person at home, but simply a man walking through a concrete corridor with a loss sitting in his chest. That calculation, the decision to be present in the gap rather than waiting for the gap to close, reveals something about who Mamiko is in Ohtani's life. She is not someone who waits for him to finish being Shohei Ohtani the baseball player before showing up as his wife. She shows up in the middle of it. In the tunnel. With the dog. Before he has had a chance to put the loss into a smaller box. The Dodgers community that learned about this moment understood what it meant immediately. Not because they are sentimental. But because they have watched Ohtani carry this team's ambitions on his shoulders for 2 seasons now, and they understand, in the way that people understand things about the athletes they love deeply, that the person making that possible needs someone who shows up in the tunnel. It would be easy to treat Decapin as the charming detail in this story. The large, photogenic Akita who adds warmth to a narrative that would be moving without him. But people who have followed Ohtani's life closely, who have paid attention to the way he talks about his dog in the rare personal moments that slip through his otherwise private public persona, understand that Decapin is not a charming detail. He is a significant presence. Ohtani has spoken, in brief and careful ways, about what dogs offer that humans cannot always provide, a quality of attention that is total and unconditional and completely unconcerned with performance. Decapin does not know the score. He does not know that the Dodgers lost to the Rockies. He does not carry any opinion about what Ohtani's ERA is or how many strikeouts he accumulated or whether the Dodgers' playoff positioning shifted by half a game. What Dekopin knows is that his person is here, and that his person's hands are in his fur, and that the moment is complete because of that. For an athlete who spends every waking hour in a world that is obsessively, relentlessly concerned with performance, where every action is measured and every result is evaluated and every moment carries the weight of expectations that would buckle most people, the presence of a creature who operates entirely outside that framework is not a small thing. It is release. Genuine, uncomplicated, unconditional release. Mamiko understood this when she brought Decapin to the tunnel. She did not come alone. She came with the full emotional kit that she knew her husband needed, her presence, which carries everything that their shared life contains, and Decapin's presence, which carries something else entirely. Something that cannot be given by a person, no matter how much they love you. The completeness of that offering, the thought behind it, the understanding of what was needed and how to provide it, is what moved the Dodgers community when they heard about it. Not the image itself, beautiful as it was. The thought behind the image. The story spread through the Dodgers community the way stories about Ohtani's private life always spread, carefully, with the instinctive protectiveness of a fanbase that has understood from the beginning that this man has given them everything public and deserves to keep everything private. But when it spread, it landed. It landed with the fans who have watched Ohtani play through the particular loneliness that can accompany transcendent greatness, the isolation of being so far ahead of everyone around you in terms of what you demand from yourself. They had wondered, the way people wonder about the athletes they care about, whether that loneliness was managed. Whether there was a private world that held him properly. The tunnel answered that question. It landed with the players who had heard about it through the clubhouse network, the informal, whispered passing of information that moves through a professional baseball team faster than any official communication. Several players, speaking to beat reporters in general terms, described hearing the story and feeling something they struggled to name. One said it made him think about his own family. Another said it reminded him why the game, for all its demands, was still worth it. It landed with the broader Dodgers staff, the trainers, the clubhouse attendants, the stadium personnel who work in those tunnel spaces every day and who rarely become the setting for stories that the baseball world talks about. The staff member who described it as the kind of thing you don't forget was not speaking loosely. She meant it precisely. And it landed with the wider baseball community, who received the story and did with it what people do with the rare moments in sports that reach past the game into something more essentially human. They held it carefully, shared it quietly, and let it mean what it meant. The scoreboard said the Dodgers lost that night. And scoreboard losses matter, they accumulate in the standings, they shape playoff positioning, they feed the relentless machinery of a 162-game season where every result carries weight. But in the tunnel beneath the stadium, in the fluorescent quiet of the space between the field and the clubhouse, something happened that the scoreboard cannot measure. A woman decided that her husband needed her presence in the gap, not after it. She made that decision without being asked, without a dramatic gesture, without any intention of being seen or celebrated for it. She brought their dog. She stood in the tunnel. She waited. And when Ohtani came around the corner and found them there, his wife still and purposeful, his dog steady and warm, the loss did not disappear. But it found its proper size. Not the whole evening. Not the defining thing. Just a result, sitting inside a life that was larger than it. The Dodgers community that heard this story did not need to be told why it touched them. They already knew. Some victories happen on the field. Some happen in the tunnel. And the ones in the tunnel, quiet, unseen, offered without audience, are sometimes the ones that matter most.